It is the 20th of December, and this day in Baptist history, our reading is the pearly gates swung open. Our passage of Scripture is Acts chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Now about that time Herod the king stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the church, and he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. Missionary service always bears with it a certain element of danger. In our account today, I will focus attention on 11 Baptist missionaries who suffered martyrdom in the Philippines on December 20th, 1943. The tragic account has been written in booklet form and was published in 1945. It is titled Through Shining Archway. Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, 1941, caught most Americans by surprise. But soon our nation was mobilized into action. However, missionaries in the Philippine Islands could do nothing but continue to minister and wait. This was exactly what they did until forced to flee before the rapidly advancing Japanese troops. As the Japanese troops approached the island of Panay, all buildings and equipment at Capiz, C-A-P-I-Z, were destroyed by American service personnel in accordance with the adopted scorched earth policy of the military. During that period of time, it was necessary for all Americans to flee to the mountains. American businessmen, miners, and their families and the missionaries fled as best they could. The group was initially successful in fleeing, and a letter from one of the missionaries, Mr. James Covell, Covell, arrived on at the mission board office in March 1944. The letter had been written on May 16, 1943, and was addressed from Hopeville. This was the name that the missionaries had given their hideaway camp facility. Apparently, their destination had been predetermined, for a folding organ had been stowed away for such an event. The little camp was located in a beautiful, deep, dry gorge with giant trees growing in it, and it could be reached only by a winding and misleading trail. Mr. Covell's letter said in part, and I quote, "We live in a grass hut with bamboo floors. The people around supply us with plenty to eat, and we have a good spring. The Japanese came very close one day in February, and we have moved out thrice to hide. We have books to read and reread. We live like natives here. We have rice every meal, greens every day, bananas, usually eggs, and sometimes chicken. Once in a while we get beef or pork. Our prospects for freedom, in a larger sense, and seeing you all, are most uncertain." End of quote. Unfortunately, the communications from the missionaries ceased, and the mission personnel at the office in the United States became more and more concerned. Their fears mounted and then were realized on March 20th, 1944, as a message from the Provost Marshal General's office in Washington concerning the Covells was received. It read, and I quote, "This office regrets to inform you that information believed to be reliable has been received, which indicates that they died in Japanese custody on the island of Panay, Philippine Islands, on 19th of December, 1943. End of quote. As war wound down in the weeks that followed, the State Department contacted the immediate families of the other missionary personnel to inform them of the deaths of their loved ones. The State Department insisted on silence for fear that if the Japanese were aware that the reports had been filtered out, they would become more vigilant and friendly informants would be silenced. Mission officials continued to cling tenaciously to the hope that perhaps the reports had been in error. During every war, rumors are rampant. No one wanted to believe that missionaries who had given themselves in behalf of others could be so maltreated in internment and then cruelly killed. Tragically, however, the day finally came when the dreaded confirmation was received from the General Secretary of the Convention of Philippine Baptist Churches. The heartbreaking letter was dated April 11, 1945, and it confirmed that indeed all the missionary band, along with five other Americans, had been put to death on December 20, 1943. The discrepancy in the two dates is probably accounted for in the realization that the missionaries were captured on December 19 and then martyred the following day. At any rate, the local Baptist pastor had gotten to the camp as soon as it was safe following the martyrdoms, and he interred the bodies in a formal Christian burial. Local Filipinos who professed to know of the event reported that the Japanese troops had sought help from nationals to discover the hiding place of the missionaries. The nationals had refused to cooperate, but in time the Japanese search was fruitful. The male missionaries might have escaped, but when the women were captured, all surrendered. The Japanese soldiers informed them that they were all under the death warrant. The missionaries asked if they might first have time to pray. And being granted their request, an hour was spent before the throne of God's grace. Following prayer, the group stood unitedly forward and declared, "Now we are ready." And with that, the shade drops upon the awful crime. The missionaries were slain, and heaven was enriched. To God be the glory.